Okay, welcome to the Spotlight with Shaun O'Rourke. I'm back with Stu. We're talking about all sorts of stuff today. We've got Indiana Jones 5, the Snyder Cut. We talk about Baywatch, Dukes of Hazzard, Green Hornet, and I do a shout out to one of my old bosses, Christie Kwan, who's a production supervisor in the film industry. There's a great article. It's going to be in the description below if you want to learn more. Christy Kwan's doing some amazing stuff. And we got some good stuff. Let's get going. Okay, so in the last week, just every other day, more news was coming out after the announcement of the Snyder Cut that was being released, and you almost can't keep up with it. So you have to kind of, there were numbers thrown around that it was going to cost 20 to 30 million. They're talking about it being, originally it was a 4-hour movie. Then the next day it was out that it would be a 6-part series of 35-minute episodes that'll add up to the whole Snyder Cut. 20 million to fix it, then 20 million to 30 million to fix it or to complete the visual effects. And Bob Greenblatt, who's the chairman of Warner Brothers today, was commenting that it was going to take more than $30 million to finish it, which leads me to believe, kind of like what we talked about, was that they're making it's going to be a series, like a limited series, a 6-episode, 4-episode, almost like, you're hearing that on Disney Plus, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, it was supposed to be 8-part, then it was cut down to 6-part. Right. And so on. So it's basically a long they might as well call it a mini series. But you were telling me, that what your thoughts were on what you think the 20 to 30 million is going to be spent on. I have my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, again, it's like, and lately it seems like you're getting different information from all over the place. You've got, them saying it's initially it was 20 million. Now it's like 30 or more. I do think if they keep it under around 20 to 30, it's probably just ADR, like the, voice acting, and that's it. Because and again, it depends that you're getting conflicting reports on the state of the Snyder Cut. Some have said it's practically done, and then others like, no, it's not done. It's like a work in progress. And I get they're going to completely retool it, probably to get back to his original vision for the mini series within budget. And so I feel like the key thing would be all the visual effects. And I feel like the visual effects would just eat up that 20 million in no time. And so that would only leave room, like, because the minute you start gearing into production, like that's a big machine you have to start turning, even on a small scale on that level, to get all those people and all the stuff. And especially with all the things going on now with the, post-lockdown kind of situation, who knows how much more that's going to cost production to kind of implement those things and then work in a different way. So they'll burn through that money quick. And I feel like you would only have time and room for like voice acting, as far as like in the CGI sequences that they need to finish. If Wonder Woman's screaming out something to Superman, that's what they would come in and perform. That's my thinking, but
here's the thing. This is why I'm going into it with a completely open mind, that they may even bring back actors to do. They had to redo. First of all, Bob Greenblatt from Warner Brothers, chairman, is on record saying they've been negotiating since last fall.
Wow.
This Snyder Cut. And that they had to extend out all the actors' contracts. Now, is that to cover ADR or is that to bring them back? And let's just be honest, like it makes sense that they would just come back and do ADR or do some looping or, whatever they got to do.
Yeah.
But I think there may be some performance stuff coming in. And I'll tell you why. And this is why I feel this, is because if they are making it a series, they may want to put in some scenes that weren't in the original. So if this is going to be longer than a 4-hour thing or 6 30-minute episodes, that's longer than maybe the 4-hour cut of the film. They're going to have to plug holes. Now, here's the other thing. Remember, a year ago, or last fall when they were negotiating this, they said there was no Snyder Cut and Warner Brothers was never going to do a Snyder Cut.
Right.
And guess what? They've done a Snyder Cut, right? They're working on it. And now it's a series for HBO Max and all this other kind of stuff. So with that being said, I can't limit it to just ADR because they told us we weren't even getting this movie in the first place.
Well,
and lied.
I think it does come down to because again, it's like that cost for Justice League was already written off. You know, they've written that off, and
True.
This is
the loss. That fiscal year. Right.
And this is a whole new kind of division or whatever. So they have like whatever their budgets are. And if you think about it, I mean, what you're saying does make sense if they choose to truly go at it like a series, because for them, 20 or 30 million to do a limited run series that's got a built-in audience, it's worth it. And if they want to spend because who knows how much, or I'm sure you know, but like how much these shows on Netflix and stuff for one season of 8 or 10 episodes, how much they spend on those. So it would make sense. And again, like if that's the way they decide to do, which I do think would make sense, because then they could spin it off and essentially turn the Zack Snyder Justice League into a series in a way, like a limited series, have it run this out and then go into the Dark Seed or whatever storyline.
Well, and that's the thing. There was some other things thrown out there that they may drop nuggets within this thing to get Henry Cavill to Man of Steel 2.
I mean, that would be awesome. Like, I would love to see a Man of Steel 2.
The Green Lantern and the Flash, Cyborg's going to get fleshed out more because remember, they were going to do a Cyborg movie. They were going to, all of it got help, but this could literally, and Cyborg may not be a feature film. They may spin it off into Cyborg's series because at this point they've got all the bugs worked out, the CGI, they know the models, and if they start doing like they're doing with all the DC Universe stuff, like the Stargirl special effects for the pilot was amazing. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. It blew away anything that's been on the CW as far as visual effects.
Well, yeah, because it was made for DC Universe.
It was made for DC, so they spent more money. Same thing with Swamp Thing. My wife, was a producer's assistant on that. I actually worked on Swamp Thing on second unit in transportation. And yeah, $85 million they spent on that because they didn't think it was going to be on TV. They just didn't. They didn't think that. But I'm just pretty blown away by all the stuff that's coming out. And I'll be honest with you, you start seeing Ben Affleck working out again.
But see, that's my thing. The one reason why I think it would be ADR is just the state of some of the actors. They might not, and again, they're not talking about airing this until 2021.
But that suit that Ben Affleck wore was a complete muscle fat suit anyway. It's like it wasn't him. I mean, he didn't have to be buff underneath that.
But Ben Affleck does not look like he did during Justice League right now. Like,
no, but you give him a few months to whip into shape. If they got some holes to fill, who knows?
Yeah,
who knows?
I'm with you. I think it would be a brilliant idea to turn that, kind of like I've been saying, create their own. Well, and Wonder Woman screws up everything. Because Wonder Woman
hit and
was
it's still
so
out there.
successful, and and Aquaman too.
Aquaman 1.3 billion, I think. Right.
So it's like they're kind of like the thing that's key. Because I feel like they would have rebooted all this by now if it wasn't for Wonder Woman and now Aquaman, because of just the way the state of everything was. Like, cancel it all, wait a couple years, and then come back out with a new take on it, which kind of feels like what they're doing now with like Joker and the Batman. And so it's sort of like what we were talking about last week. We're in this weird world where you've got two different sort of camps starting to overlap now. And what happens? Like, it doesn't feel like Warner Brothers has a clear, or DC has a clear direction to go yet.
Well, maybe what we're looking at is the metamorphosis of two completely separate worlds. One on HBO Max that could spawn off all, because HBO Max is doing a Green Lantern series.
Yeah.
They've already said that. And if the Green Lantern character, again, if the Green Lantern character did appear in Justice League but was cut out, because there was some in that one big battle, they showed them flying through the air in that big battle sequence with the bad guy. And who was the bad guy in that one?
Which movie are you talking about?
The Justice League, the villain.
Oh, it wasn't Dark Seed or whatever. It was I don't remember.
Whatever
That's
the
how much I
guy's,
didn't care about him.
and see, that's what's sad is that we don't even no. But I remember I can see him in my head, but I know he had a name, and I just can't remember the character's name. But when that battle was going on with all the Amazonian women and all the different factions were flying in, there were Green Lantern Corps there.
Oh, really? I didn't see that.
You have to go back and
I'll have to watch it again.
Watch the just look up in the clouds and shit. You'll see the green flowing and then So it's obvious that the seed was going to be planted there. So maybe there was, whoever the character is going to be in the Green Lantern series on HBO Max might be who they're bringing in to shoot scenes for, and then he would have to interact with somebody.
I mean, that would be a good way to launch the Green Lantern series to have him show up
in the Snyder Cut.
Because wasn't that initially the plan was to have Green Lantern show up at the very end.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's a great idea, and I would love to see a HBO that would keep me on HBO Max if they just started turning out movies or series. I mean, of the DC characters. And then kind of do what DC or Marvel's doing or Disney Plus and springboard those onto the screen in big features. And then we might even, if Gal Gadot or Gadot or whatever is willing to do a streaming series, we might even get Wonder Woman as a series a little bit. That would be awesome. I doubt it would happen, but that would be cool.
It was Steppenwolf.
That's it.
And I think, when you talked about CGI and how they're going to go back and redo a lot of CGI, I think they're going to try to go back to that original Batman vs. Superman when Steppenwolf showed up with the cubes and all that stuff and screamed, and he looked more like a warlock. Like he didn't have a human form.
Right.
And I have a funny feeling they're going to go back to that and not stick with what they have. Although what they have was, it's already been completely fleshed out and realized. Maybe they do stick with it. I don't know.
Nobody really dug it. That's the thing.
And even the actor that played him, I think they did mocap suit for some of it, or he voiced it. He said nothing he did so much better work when Zack Snyder was involved than when Joss Whedon was. And he said that character was not the character he signed on to play.
Yeah.
When it was fully realized, when they made it look more human. And I think maybe that was, when Warner Brothers was thinking it's too dark.
Yeah.
We need to get away from that darkness. It looks like a demon. People aren't going to dig it. Let's go back and,
this is sort of brings up an interesting conversation of, so you've had two franchises that sort of catered to what they thought the fans wanted, and they kind of failed at that. Because Justice League, clearly they, you had fans like Superman's too dark, everything's so bleak, and, whatever. So the idea at the last minute was to throw Joss Whedon in and try to lighten it up. And
like in Avengers, try to bring it some levity. Yeah.
And so clearly that didn't work because it's we said last week, it's just two different styles kind of coming together. And then we've seen that with the last Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker, where they kind of went too overboard with fan service, and it hindered what probably could have been a better movie. Because I know we had talked about, and I don't think we've ever talked about it on the podcast, but sort of there was a rumor that George Lucas had an idea, and then the guy who played Doctor Who, Matt Smith, was cast in that, and he was going to play a bigger role, but then they kind of all changed it after The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that more? I don't even know if it's a legit rumor at this point, but there was that talk, because I remember we talked about it when it came out, that initially there was this quest that they had to go on to find this guy, and that was it changed completely. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's vague, but I know there were more with the Rise of Skywalker, there were more of those MacGuffins. There were supposed to be more of the Wayfinders, right? And it changed so much, and Yeah, I mean, but I see what you're saying about the fan service with Rise of Skywalker and the fan service with Justice League. It's like, you have to find that balance. And then,
Yeah.
you're seeing, David Ayer, who did Suicide Squad. Now, apparently, like, that movie was taken away from him and he didn't even get to edit and have a final cut on that film.
Right.
And so now he's pushing for the Ayer cut, for his movies, asking Warner Brothers to let him redo Suicide Squad because he said the Suicide Squad everyone saw is not the movie he shot. I mean, but every director could say that at this point.
Right. I mean, I think that's
so. When do you
slope.
cut the legs out from underneath? You got James Gunn is doing Suicide Squad 2. He's probably going to take it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't. I mean, David Ayer, I don't think you had your shot. I don't know. He doesn't carry the weight.
Well, I think too, I mean, it's not like he had like this epic story and they messed it up. I do believe Zack Snyder had a fully realized vision, when he wrote this or whatever this, when they were planning to shoot Justice League, he had a vision. And I'm not saying David Ayer didn't have one, but he even admits like he wrote that in like a month or two. Like they were rushing to get that into production. And so it was a really quick, so he defaulted to that when everyone was complaining about the movie more than, they took the edit away from me or whatever. I heard more about, I only had a month and a half or whatever to write the script. So I kind of feel even if you got another cut, it's going to be what it is because the story wasn't that great to begin with. So even if you, cut it up a little bit and make it a little jazzier, it's still going to not be a great movie at the end of the day. I mean, to me, Will Smith saved that movie. I know everyone loves Margot Robbie, and she was great as Harlequin, but all the scenes of Will Smith, awesome. Like, he did such a great job.
And he's not in the next one.
Yeah. Mistake, I think. Yeah.
I wonder why.
I mean, who knows? With Will Smith, he might be like, I'm not, Well, I do remember
maybe
reading,
he didn't want to work with James Gunn.
Well, I remember reading he was really off-put by the guy playing Joker. What's his name?
Jared Leto?
Jared Leto, because he was doing weird
because
shit.
He would leave dead animals on there.
Well, he's mailing them weird shit and and got to the point where Will Smith even said I didn't like the dude because he was just trying to be Joker 24/7, super
method. He was method actor. Yeah.
And so it probably man, fuck this shit. I ain't working with these crazy ass fools. I'm sure he was just why even go into that? So, but that sucks because he really was one of the shinier parts of that movie was all the scenes with Will Smith.
Yeah, and he was the only one that had an arc because he had a daughter in it and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean he was the only fleshed out character, and of course, me, I'm not a fan of Jai Courtney, whatever you want to call him, the really bad the best role he's ever done, the franchise killer. Yeah, yeah, he killed the Terminator with Terminator Genesis.
Well, I think more than him.
He killed Die Hard with that last Die Hard, what was it? A Good Day to Die Hard was the name of the movie.
Get the fuck. I don't even think I watched that one.
That was terrible. It was an absolutely terrible movie.
Yeah.
But Suicide Squad, I wasn't a fan. I just wasn't a fan. I don't know the Suicide Squad. I didn't know the characters. I just wasn't a fan. So even if they made the David Ayer cut, I would skip it.
Well,
because those characters don't have the weight of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. They don't. They just don't.
Well, I never really read them. I never really collected that comic or anything. But my only real experience with them was watching Arrow, which I'm sure wasn't faithful to the comic, but I enjoyed the Arrow version more than the movie version.
Well, because they could flesh it out.
Right. Well, they had more going on with the
TV series. Yeah. I wanted to talk about Indiana Jones 5. We've talked about it before, but some news broke. Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy's husband, Kathleen Kennedy is one of the greatest producers of all time.
Yeah.
And Frank Marshall, again, one of the greatest producers of all time. All the Bourne films, which I'm a fan of those. I didn't see the one with
I like him. He does good stuff.
Indiana Jones 5. It was asked to them, like, when are they going to get into production, because it got pushed, blah blah. We got the COVID-19 going on, and he said an off the cuff kind of thing, like, well, we're not going to have craft service going forward. And I'm like,
That's
what?
crazy.
And I work in the film industry, and first of all, you'd kill two positions: the craft service and craft service assistant. So you'd kill two jobs doing that. Second of all, we work 12, 14-hour days, sometimes 18-hour days, and you're going to give us one meal after 6 hours? No.
Yeah.
No, never going to happen. So Crafty is probably not going anywhere. They're going to probably do everything single packaged to contain germs. There just won't be any cheese spreads or anything that people can grab a spoon and scoop stuff out and put it on their plate. But like when you have 200 crew members working on a show, especially like a cross-continent show like Indiana Jones, where it jumps from continent to continent, and you're not feeding your people, what is the one thing when we've produced projects in the past, independent projects?
You have to have food. Yeah. Got to feed
a
them.
happy crew is a fed crew. You want to make you make sure you have hot coffee available 24/7. People could say, oh, well, it's spoiled. They're spoiled. All these Hollywood. No, dude, like food, when you're working 12, 14-hour days, sometimes 17, 18-hour days, you have got to have coffee. You've got to have food around to take these mini breaks. You can't not feed your people. So I call bullshit on Frank Marshall. I think he was just throwing something out there to see if it would stick. It's not an expensive department.
Well, no, but I mean, Crafty tends to be the fun part of being on a set, because that's usually where everyone's doing their job, being busy, and then they'll usually come in between setups if they have time to grab something to eat, and you can shoot the shit and kind of like talk about what's going on, real quick.
Department heads will get together and discuss a shot that's coming up while they grab coffee and while they grab. Yeah, dude, it's like it's such a thing.
Yeah.
People don't get it because, like, unless you work for Google, I know your wife used to work for Google.
Yeah.
They have cafeterias. They feed their people.
Yeah. It's nice.
They in San Francisco, they have buses that pick you up and bring you to work. You can bring your laundry. You can bring your kids. They have laundry. Your bags of clothes are folded for you when you get out. Your kids have daycare. They want you to live and breathe Google. They don't want you to. I saw a documentary on it. It's insane. They don't want you to do anything but work at Google and only have Google on the mind. So they want all the little things in your life taken care of. Same thing with the film industry, but on a smaller level. They take care of us big time on these shows. But the one thing that they do most is, and it's also like, if you take a lunch break, a 12-hour, you got a 12-hour scheduled day, 6 hours after call, your first call, if it's 7 a.m., you take your lunch break, half hour. If you had to take 200 crew members and not feed them, not give them catering, and just say, leave the production lot, leave the location, go find food and come back, and all you have is a half an hour. And sometimes we're like an hour or 2 hours away in the middle of nowhere. Like if we were on, when I did Under the Dome, 3 seasons for CBS, we're out at a barn, at a farm in a barn that is 45 to an hour away from civilization in cornfields, and you're going to tell 200 crew members to go find food. It's bullshit. Like the unions will come in and just be like, no, dude, you got to take care. You can't work somebody like a slave for 18 hours and not give them a donut. It doesn't, I know it sounds trivial to people who don't work in the industry, but most people work 9 to 5. Most people work 40 hours a week. We work 70 to 80, sometimes 100 hours a week. And in a 6-month period, if we do a TV series, it takes about 6 months to do 10 episodes, 12 episodes. A feature film takes about 6 months. I'm just ballparking averages. Now, I remember Iron Man 3, when they shot, that was 10 months, 65 shooting days, but a 10-month pre-production to wrap. Anyway, make a long story short, film crew members work the same amount of hours a normal person works in a full year, 52 weeks at 40 hours a week. We do that in 6 months. So in a year, if we've worked one show and if we do one TV show and one feature film, we've worked more hours than the average. We've worked 2 years of labor versus somebody who works 1 year at 40 hours a week. So when people are like, "Oh, these film people don't work," no, dude, it's slave labor, man. You have no life. You don't see your kids. You don't see your family. I know I'm going off on a rant, but the thing is, like, it bothered me that Frank Marshall, who I love, and I love Kathleen Kennedy, his wife, said there would be no craft service. I think he was throwing some red meat out there to whoever was interviewing him, and it's bullshit. It's not going to happen. You got to feed your people and take care of your people. But that brings me back to Indiana Jones 5. James Mangold's the director. And another thing that just kind of absolutely blew my mind that Frank Marshall said was, we're starting from scratch on the script.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah. David Cope, who wrote Crystal Skull, they brought him back. He wrote the first draft. Then it was passed over to Jonathan Kasdan, Larry Kasdan's son, wrote Solo, right? The Han Solo movie. He did a pass at it. Got passed off to Dan Fogelman after that, who wrote the show This Is Us and Cars. The Pixar thing, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And now James Mangold, I guess, is just, he wants to do, I just hope you don't pull a Rian Johnson. Like, I have more faith in James Mangold than I do have Rian Johnson, but now he wants to start from scratch and have a whole new script.
Well, he gave us a great Logan movie. I mean, a Wolverine movie, you know, like, I mean, he gave us two great, I mean, honestly, the best standalone Wolverine movies were his, which was the Wolverine and Logan. So it's like, I mean, so I have faith that he'll do it. And to be honest,
he just did Ford versus Ferrari,
which was
that was
amazing.
the one thing I gave props to, is because, like, he really captured the 1960s and all the eras that they went through in that film. He captured them all. So if the new Indiana Jones film, the last one took place in 53, you know, this one might be closer to 60. At least he understands the period close, the period, like, he gets it.
How are you going to do Nazis in the 60s?
No, there won't be Nazis. I guarantee there won't be Nazis. It'll definitely be like, it'll be more like Temple of Doom, as far as the villain will be some cult or some. You're just not going to do Nazis. No way.
I have to say, though, I'm not sad to see Spielberg take a back seat, because
I'm not either.
I do feel like Spielberg today isn't the Spielberg we grew up with. And a great
agree.
example of that is, I read the book Ready Player One. Amazing book that really pulls a lot of inspiration from
every
Spielberg's movie? A lot of Spielberg's movies. I mean, pretty much all of the 80s, you know, and you know, I was the first person when he was brought on to direct the movie. I was like, I don't know if that's the right move, because he won't see it as a fan, because he lived it. He made those movies, so he doesn't see it the same way we all do. And the Ready Player One was really a big I love you to the 80s kind of book. And
it was the most unoriginal anything you could ever come up with. I mean, the guy, look, no offense.
The book was great.
The book and the movie, I'm sorry. I saw the movie. I didn't read the book, but let me tell you something. He took all the great ideas that came out in the 80s and he put it all into one story in a book. What the hell did he really come up with?
Well, no, it's more about like
nothing. I saw the movie.
The book is way better, because
nothing.
It's more at it like, if I was to be that kid, it's like you're seeing it. It's like you get to play with all the toys you grew up loving. Like, that's the thing that kids like, and it's true, because if you created a virtual reality where you could be any avatar you want, you see it in games now. Everyone's Deadpool or something else. So like, that's how people would be. They would be doing the things they loved. And like, for us, you're saying you wouldn't be RoboCop if you couldn't?
No. Well, all I'm saying is the guy didn't come up with anything original in his story. He literally picked everything that was successful in the 80s and he made it into something in a book, and then it got bought up. Can you imagine the rights that it would take? And I heard Disney was like, no, they wanted TIE fighters in it and stuff. And Disney was like, nah,
right.
we don't know. We're not playing that game. because that's really what the guy did. Like, I understand it's got a special place in your heart, that movie. And
Not
I
just
like
mine.
it too.
Millions of people.
I like the DeLorean car. I like the little, it's had the Knight Rider thing on the front. I get it. I get the Roboc. I get all this stuff.
Right.
But it was the most unoriginal shit I've ever
No
watched in
way.
my life, only because it literally stole from everything that was good in the first place. Same, you know how I feel about Stranger Things. Same thing. They just emulate everything that we love. The Goonies, Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, ripping it off shot by shot. They ripped off shot for shot a scene from Back to the Future where the kid gets up and he's putting on his pants and he falls over. You put him next to the when Marty McFly is getting up and trying to put his pants on and falls. It's shot for shot. That is not paying homage. That is stealing.
I agree.
And that's
with you.
how I've always felt, and that's how I feel about Ready Player One. I've always felt that way.
That
changed my mind.
You need to read the book because it's totally not like that. But the thing, and I will agree with you about Stranger Things, especially the last season. Like they're straight up ripping off scenes, like the Shining moment with the toys.
Yeah,
and then
Close Encounters with the toys on the ground.
Cheesy ass Terminator Russian guy that they brought in, which was
and
really
I get
dumb.
that it's because it's the 80s. They're trying to emulate. It's the same
Right.
thing. It's like Ready Player One. You're taking everything in the 80s and you're throwing it into one movie.
They're copying that. This pretty much says these things existed and I love them. And so like, because this was a great thing, and I will say this was a cool part of the movie was anybody, like as a kid, I always wanted to see the DeLorean, the flying DeLorean from Back to the Future doing cool shit. And if I could drive a flying DeLorean like that guy did, that is like nerd fantasy, like crazy.
I love that the 66 Batmobile was in there and they didn't have enough of it. Right?
No, so
Mecha Godzilla was great.
Right. So you look at it like that. They're not copying 80s movies. They're literally taking elements from 80s movies to create new stories, which is like if you could take all these cool things from the movies you love and then make something fun out of it, that's what's awesome about it. That's what was great about the book. And so where the thing is, like Spielberg, for me, where he missed was it just got so vanillified to the point where it took the really cool aspects of the book and just watered it down so much to turn it into that movie that is sort of like too much like like a Spielberg movie. And again, it's like that shouldn't be done by Spielberg because Spielberg would never be a fan of himself. And that's the point of those movies, or that book was, it's a fan of those movies. So it's like two different things. Like Stranger Things is a fan of those movies, but they're trying to copy them and rip them off in a way, put it like for shot kind of stuff.
They call it paying homage. Some people like me call it straight out stealing. Like,
right.
Chief Brody from Jaws, the truck, Hopper's truck.
I agree with that.
The Hopper's outfit as sheriff is same as Chief Brody's. His deputies same as the deputies in Jaws. Like it is to the point where it is ridiculously ripped off. Like not paying homage is in a scene in the sheriff's office having a mug in the background that says Amity, and that's it. That's a paying homage. Not stealing the car, stealing the outfit, stealing the costumes. That's not paying homage. That's ripping off, and that's what bothers me about some of that stuff. And now we first started this all about James Mangold, and we were talking about the Indiana Jones. But I'm going to circle back because this ripping off shit, the 1980s, this goes right into something else I wanted to talk about later, which was, and I'm bringing it up now, Pam Anderson. Whether you love her or hate her, whatever. She did an interview and they asked her about the Baywatch movie. Did you see it? Yeah. She says, it sucked. I didn't like it. The one with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Zac Efron.
Yeah.
I never watched it either. And I like Dwayne. I did Journey to the Mysterious Island with Dwayne, "The Rock" Johnson. So I got to see him and his crew and all that stuff when I was working on that film. And super nice guy, great to kids. Every time they'd come up to a barricade, he'd go talk to all the kids. They loved him as the wrestler, So I got no ill will towards the cast and crew of these films. I think what bothers me the most is like what happened with the Dukes of Hazzard movie with Johnny Knoxville and Sean William Scott, Green Hornet with Seth Rogen, They take 80s or with the Green Hornet 60s properties, these cult properties like Baywatch and like Dukes of Hazzard and they turn them into complete raunchy comedies.
Yeah.
Instead of like making a serious Baywatch movie about people rescuing people or the Dukes of Hazzard, like they twisted that so much where that was a wholesome, good television show. Now we could debate the Confederate flag all day long. That's neither here nor there in this conversation, but I'm talking about like how there was always a bad thing that happened, but they resolved it. It was all about family. They were trying the Duke boys and Uncle Jesse were never making moonshine because he'd cut a deal with the government to keep the Duke boys out of jail, to never make moonshine again. And so like there's all these moral, really nice elements to the Dukes of Hazzard, that they corrupted it so much when they made the one movie and then the straight to video movie, the Dukes of Hazzard 2, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And it was just nothing but, it was like they took American Pie with the TNA and all that stuff and they smashed it right into the Dukes of Hazzard. Same thing with Baywatch. It's this over the top, gross out sex. Like, why do they need to take, and that's why like I'm afraid like if they ever do Airwolf or they ever do Knight Rider on a really good scale, that they're just going to spoof it. And I just think it's just why ruin something that was really fun back then. Although, you watch Knight Rider now, it doesn't hold up as well and things like that. And I think I had a discussion with my wife about that the other day about how some of these movies she was watching MacGyver and could barely get through a couple of them with Richard Dean Anderson, the old one.
Oh yeah, it was cheesy as hell.
But she said it was so good back then. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you were like 11 and 12 and 13 and seeing him, crack eggs in a radiator that was shot with bullet holes and it clogs, because it cooks the egg and and the car can drive. I was like, that was cool. I said, but the editing pace was different in the 80s. They didn't have Steadicams back then. So everything was dolly track. And so everything had a different look and editing pace for television. That's not like it is today.
Probably still edited real like with film too.
Film. It was probably shot Super 16 and I mean, like it's not like we're used to, this generation coming up is used to seeing shows like 24, The Shield, very handheld, Steadicam work like constantly.
Well, also the editing changed dramatically when it went digital, where you could do non-linear editing. It was a game. So now you got like when you watch an 80s TV show or movie and watch one now, it's night and day different. And the edit, even though everyone still uses the basic cut and dissolve and fade to black, but just the way they're able to edit is much more dynamic now than it was when they were probably just using reels of film and splicing it and cutting like they did back in the day. So, and on TV,
you barely ever see helicopter shot or drone shots. They didn't have drones back then. They had helicopters, and a helicopter shot was only usually an establishing shot because it was expensive to hire a helicopter, hire a pilot, hire the camera guy to hang out the side of the helicopter and do the shot.
The equipment, the gimbal systems.
Now you throw up a small drone with a 4K camera on it, and all you see now in movies are just drone shot after drone shot after drone shots
over the place.
Because that looks like production value, but you're not really spending it. Although some of the higher end drone operators, you have to have a focus puller that goes with the drone operator. And
I'm sure most shows are using legit camera ops running drones and stuff like that.
But also you take the insurance out of it when you're not flying a helicopter in the air with somebody who could die.
Oh, it's way
you're
cheaper.
Just sending up a drone. And all that. Let me circle back because we were talking about editing of it, but circle back to this destroying of 80s properties by making them stupid comedies. What do you think, man?
Well, I think the first thing I remember doing that was Starsky and Hutch with Ben Stiller.
That's right.
And I remember thinking that's kind of odd. They went goofy with it, but
because I love Starsky and Hutch was a good show back in the day.
Yeah, and I mean, and I guess I was like, I guess I can see it because at the time Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson were like in all kinds of movies together. So I was like, oh, they just found another property. But I remember kind of feeling like a little slighted that it was not taken more seriously growing up watching Starsky and Hutch. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And then they kind of did it
because you could have made a really serious movie
right
based on Starsky and Hutch.
But also, kind of like what you're saying, when you go back and watch these shows, they are campy as hell. And that's like kind of what I was talking about with Star Trek The Next Generation, was when you watch that and compare it to what was out back then, the fact that it holds up now is impressive. And how great of a show it was in 87 when you had tons of shows in the 80s, like, Baywatch is maybe more 90s, but like, had all these shows that were really campy. Like, when you watch them now, you're just like, how did I think this was cool?
Like Night, but remember, I was like 11 and 12 when Knight Rider came out. So to me, I didn't know what production value was. I was seeing a car jump, and after Dukes of Hazzard went away and was in syndication, this was the new thing. Was the
sci-fi Dukes of Hazzard?
It was sci-fi Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah. So
guys, kids
but
boys.
none of it holds up, man. The 80s television shows, I mean, even at least with Magnum PI, he was a detective. That could hold up.
Yeah.
Hardcastle and McCormick, not so much these days. It was just another way to get a car in a show, because people thought the cars are what makes the show. Make a car jump. If you can make a car jump and put it in a show, you had a hit on television. That's what they were thinking.
Kids like cool cars doing cool things. Like, we were pretty
merchandise.
Also, like,
merchandise.
People need to understand too, in the 80s, that environment was like. There was no internet. There was, like, you didn't have a ton of TV channels back then, like you have now. So there was not a lot of content. So you were really just grasping at anything you could get that was somewhat cool. And so, like, for a kid, cars jumping stuff, it's cool. Kids today have no idea how good they have it. Like, there is just so much content out now that it's like, it's crazy. And the production value on almost all of it is insanely good, like movie quality, because of the technology is getting cheaper and they're able to move faster and do things better. But it's just like people just can't really appreciate it. Like, you can just be like, everything in the 80s was stupid, or, it was written poorly or done dumb or whatever. But when you really go look at it, it's like, there wasn't really anything going on back then, as far as you had the major networks was really the big three. Big three,
NBC, CBS, and ABC. Fox wasn't around until later on in the 80s, like, because that's when, and their big thing was The Simpsons. I mean, because that's really what launched Fox.
Yeah, Tracy Ullman Show.
Tracy Ullman Show,
and Arsenio Hall and all that.
Yep.
And I mean, that was definitely late 80s, because I feel like, because Next Gen Star Trek came on Fox. Yeah. And it was like, I think that was one of the big draws to the network at the time. But it was,
by the way, I just want to jump in real quick. Today I watched season 1, Next Generation episode, I think it was 25. The one where they found the people they were going to the neutral zone for the first time to interact with the Romulans. They found the satellite with the cryo people in there. The guy was like the oil man, and or whatever. He wasn't oil man, but he was like a musician. And his liver was and they had preserved themselves and they were brought back to life. And dude, it's such a good episode, man.
And that was season 1, which really season 1 and 2 were not the best of that run either. Like, especially season 3. By the end of season 3 is when it's just clipping. And season 5 so far has probably been my favorite season, just because the writing's just been insane on it. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because we've hit a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, but I got to go back to Indy 5 and James Mangold. I mean, obviously it's not going to get going until 2021. Yeah. So they've got another year to write. So that's Harrison Ford will be 78 making the movie. And it won't come out till he's maybe 80, 79, 80 if post. Who knows? I think, Harrison should probably retire after this movie, I think.
I agree.
And pull a Sean Connery and go out on, because the last thing he wants is to have another movie that's just kind of a half-efforted kind of film that is like, what was that movie that Sean Connery did that he was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? And he was like, I'm out.
That's
after that one, he was like, that killed his career. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Third
he was
act
like,
is always shit.
Done. So as far as the script goes, I mean, I have faith in James Mangold. I have faith in Frank Marshall, and Kathleen Kennedy is going to come back on board to produce this film. And
keep her away.
No,
hopefully she'll probably have all the free time after they don't renew her contract. So
you know what? Well, I think she's going to transition anyway.
Yeah.
But here's something. Josh Gad's been doing these things where he reunites these casts. During the COVID-19 on his YouTube channel. He's got, a couple of million followers now, and 5 million, I think, or something. And he did the whole cast of Back to the Future, and he asked them all these questions. I don't know if you watched that, but it was really good. And then he had the cast of the Goonies on, and then he had, the actor was there who plays Short Round. In the original Data. He played Data.
Yeah.
And Kwan, I think that's his name. No, it's something else.
He never really did anything after those movies, did he?
Well, he went off to college and all this other kind of stuff. But see, here's the kicker. During that interview, he said he was getting back into acting and training and all sorts of stuff. And the minute he said it, I was like, Indiana Jones 5.
You think he's going to be in that? That could be cool. Or
Why
Goonies
not?
2.
No.
Maybe
Goonies 2's
Kathleen
never
Kennedy is realizing her time is done at Lucasfilm and is going back to Amblin Entertainment and gonna do whatever.
Kathleen Kennedy, worked on Temple of Doom.
Well, she was Spielberg's person, because she was
her
him.
assistant on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and
but she was with him more than Lucas, I think, and then sort of jumped onto Lucasfilm and then betrayed him like a Sith Lord, and then turned his franchise into shit. But so let her go back over there.
Here you go. Now she's gonna bring it back full circle with Data or with Short Round
or Goonies 2.
I don't think Goonies 2's happening because Dick Donner is like 90, no 80 something.
He wouldn't direct it.
He wanted to do it, but I don't think you can find a compelling story better than One-Eyed Willie and the ship coming out at the end. You can't make another one, and it'll all be CG and it won't be practical effects like the original. It's just leave the Goonies alone. There's certain things you got to leave alone.
I'm with you, but I don't trust Hollywood these days to not give us something we don't want and, try to market it up on our nostalgia. So, yeah.
And again, it's like, I've said this before, but all the new Star Wars toys are Empire Strikes Back. The new Black Series is all Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So if that tells you anything, no one wants Rise of Skywalker figures. No one wants Last Jedi figures. No one wants Force Awakens figures. They want original trilogy figures, period. That just, if that doesn't just scream where all the good stuff was.
Kathleen Kennedy did an amazing job. I don't know what else does.
She just didn't do a good job with the marketing of the toys.
No, she didn't do a good job with any of it.
All right, so we've had...
She just lucked into a couple of good films.
We're on our fourth writer for Indiana Jones 5. And, this is the same cluster that they had with... Crystal Skull, for years, like Frank Darabont, who did Walking Dead, he wrote a draft.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be so good, his version of what Crystal Skull was supposed to be. And I think the script's out there online. You can find it. There was a biplane fight and all sorts of crazy stuff that went on. And, they shelved it and went with whatever David Cope had written at that point. But there might've been 4 or 5 writers that cranked out Indiana Jones movies in the 15 years between the last one and 2008's Crystal Skull. I don't know, man. I just, we're on our fifth writer for this.
I have faith. I have faith in him because, so far he hasn't seen anything that I haven't liked. And the fact that how you could come from Wolverine Origins, and really turn it around, because that movie was trash. That director, he even now to this day still tries to defend it. You did a horrible job. You knew jack shit about comic books, and you went and tried to reinvent it in some stupid ass way.
That's
Like,
that's it.
yeah,
like
what he did
that,
to Deadpool, it's so dumb. And it's, don't even get me started on that movie. But like, I loved when I saw the Wolverine outside of the third act, like where it went to Silver Samurai and that got hokey. But up until that point, that was a solid Wolverine movie.
Oh yeah,
And
hands down.
and then Logan, finally, we got to see, which kind of sucks because we didn't see Wolverine in his prime, but we finally got an R-rated Wolverine who could really
Oh,
be
dude.
Wolverine. Like
The
that
beginning
first scene,
when they were trying to jack the car, and
I
he's
know.
just right through the skull and then come out
That's the comic
dude.
books. That's the
I know.
Like, I was going nuts. I was like, "Oh my god, this is just like the comics. It's great." And but unfortunately, he's all broken and old and shit, so we don't get to see him like amazing.
We got to see Weapon X though.
Well, I mean, briefly, and
Yeah.
kind of. But I mean, so that's where I'm like, thank you, James Mangold. You gave me the Wolverine that I really wanted to see all this time. So I do feel like he has the sense to understand the fan base and not fuck it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And
not screw
he
it over.
understands period pieces.
Yes. Yes.
I just gotta hope he gets it right, man.
I think he will.
Because this has to be Harrison Ford's Logan. It has to be.
Yeah. And that's what's funny. You've been saying that forever, and they got James Mangold. So
That's all I've been saying. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do a shout out to Christie Kwan, who I worked with. She was the production coordinator on Journey to the Mysterious Island that I worked on. Voyage LA magazine, which is an LA city guide, did an expose on her, and she has just, after she finished Journey to the Mysterious Island, she went on to do the Avengers as production coordinator. And then
Just
she
a small
did, yeah, just a small gig. And then she goes on, she did House of Cards for 13 episodes before she jumped on Transformers Age of Distinction. And then she got hooked with the Michael Bay thing there. So she did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then Warner Brothers the Disney, the Mouse House sucked her up. She did Captain America Civil War. She did Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then sucked right back into Michael Bay, that with Bumblebee. But she stepped it up, and now she's production supervisor, and she did the LA unit for Mulan, which has been delayed but's coming out. She did the LA unit for Black Widow, which is been delayed and coming out, and she was the production supervisor on Top Gun Maverick, which
super excited for.
We are so, but dude, I'm excited for Mulan, Black Widow, and Top Gun, and then she did Civil War.
Yeah.
And I got to work with her on Journey to the Mysterious Island. And that was 2011 when we shot that.
Wow.
And it didn't come out till 2012. So I've known her for a long time. Voyage LA magazine, a great article if you want to hear about someone's career, where she started from and how far she's come, and how she's just kicking ass and taking names, and then working with Tom Cruise with these planes. I mean, to be a production supervisor, it's a hard job because, and even a production coordinator, you're kind of at that point, you're the brain of the whole operation. Everybody reports to you with their needs, and you have to, and as a production supervisor, you have to make creative decisions and financial decisions. And like, it is not the position everybody's cut out for. But the beauty about Christie Kwan, which is why I love her so much, is, she has such a temperament, an absolutely beautiful temperament, even keel. She doesn't lose it. She know, and if the shit hits the fan or anything like that, I mean, she is just so even keel, and she understands creatives because she is a creative. She understands the process of how to make films. And to see her career just keep skyrocketing is just fantastic. And so if we'll put the link in the description below for the Voyage LA magazine to check out this article, guys, because Christie Kwan's a rock star. So I wanted to talk about that and just give her a shout out. Also, my wife and I watched she said to me, she's like, I haven't seen the prequels.
Oh, really?
So we started, I said, okay, she wants to watch all the Star Wars movies every Monday night.
Oh.
So we started with the Phantom Menace. She did not like Jar Jar Binks at all.
Who does, man?
And I explained to her about the backlash that Ahmad Best got, and he almost committed. There was an article that came out about him being depressed, and the fans went after him, and he almost committed suicide and all this kind of stuff. And I felt really bad, but it goes back to what you said about Spielberg making a movie. Like, if Spielberg's not the guy he was back then, okay?
Right.
One of the things that I pointed out to my wife as the movie Phantom Menace was playing on was, at this point, Lucas was not the guy who made the original Star Wars or American Graffiti. He had metamorphosed into an older man, and he had two adopted kids at that point, his son
Right.
and his daughter, who his daughter was in the movie. He put her in the movie, and his son was little. And I remember in the behind the scenes thing when his son was brought into the creature shop where they had the maquettes, the little creatures or something, that they make when they design. And when he first saw Jar Jar Binks, the kid, I don't know how old he was a toddler, I guess. And he pointed at it and went, gun, 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 gun. And so the story goes, if I'm getting it correctly, that's where Lucas was like, well, I guess we're calling it a Gungan.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to my wife, I said, this movie was made more for children than the original Star Wars was, because at that point, Lucas was making a fairy tale for children, but from the perspective of a 25-year-old. Plus, the first movie, Star Wars, had a lot of the Vietnam War was going on. There was a lot so it was a different time, although, you could say in the 90s and all that stuff, there were things going on too that reflected in it, because the first movie is so heavy with the Senate and the Galactic Republic and the Federation, and there was a lot of politics in it. But you can tell with the Gungan fighting the all the scenes with them and the blue balls and Jar Jar stepping in poop and all, like it was not made for, it was made like he made a movie for his kids to watch, because at that point he's a father. So the same thing with Spielberg. Like Spielberg, making an Indiana Jones movie now is not the same guy that made the Indiana Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just a different. His mind is in a different place because he's pushing 80 now, right? Spielberg's like 70 something, right?
Oh shit, is he? I didn't know that. Yeah,
I think so. I think so. But
gotta be 60s, man. Really, he can't be 80. Because he had to have been in his mid 20s in the 70s, right?
Well, he shot Jaws in 75. He was 26 years old. Spielberg, 73.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. So, yeah. I mean, I tried to explain to my wife. I said, you have to take the nuggets. And she really, she did not want to, she almost didn't want to finish the movie. And I said, no, just wait for Darth Maul to show up. Just wait. I had to keep telling her, watch the Darth Maul stuff. Because that is, and of course we're watching it on Disney Plus. So thank God they replaced Yoda with the CGI Yoda and didn't have the puppet in there from the original release, because that puppet was so bad. That would have killed her from watching the other ones, I think.
Oh, really? I didn't even remember.
Oh yeah. They replaced the puppet, the original Yoda puppet that was in it. And, she didn't understand the midichlorian thing. She didn't understand that the whole, Shmi Skywalker was, it was a virgin birth, there was no father. It was just created in her. It was like, the chosen one, the godlike figure, is my son and all this kind of stuff. I had to explain a couple of things like that, because it was just too much, the pod race.
You shouldn't have to. Yeah.
You shouldn't have to. Yeah. But again, I think, Spielberg always, pushing the envelope with CGI and all this kind of Lucas. His mind was in a different place, and he was thinking about his kids and wanting to make a movie his kids would like. And I think at that point, where in the original films, he didn't realize the toys were going to make him, $4 billion in sales over all that time. And this one was like, we're making toys now because
Yeah.
I know what it did back then. And I remember that no one
Right.
knew the toys were going to sell. And now we're making toys. So I just think he was in a different place. And, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah,
We're
man,
watching. We're going to watch the Attack of the Clones next week. And that one, you know, the whole
well, it's funny
Obi-Wan
because
Kenobi with a mullet is going to be hard for her to watch. But
after we talked about, you were saying you should watch the last 2 episodes of Clone Wars. So I did, and that was really good. And the part with Vader at the end was really I would love to see a show in that kind of animation at the end of Vader and the lost years of him. That would be amazing.
Well,
but,
you got to watch Star Wars Rebels because he's in a whole arc of the season.
Then I'll check that out. So I went back and started watching.
And it's James
Clone
Earl Jones
Wars.
doing the voice. They brought him back.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely check that out then. But I went and watched. I'd watched the first episode of Clone Wars a long time ago, and it just was like, oh, I can't get into it. But I just jumped to the second episode, and then I started watching it, and I was digging it. So I was like, I dig this now. So I get why everyone's all excited, you know, loves the Clone Wars. It's just the pilot for whatever reason didn't like pull me in.
Yeah.
But the writing and the storytelling on that, I would rather watch that than the prequels because we did the same thing. Like my wife and I went to watch the you know, all the Star Wars movies again. I just remember like we didn't even watch Phantom Menace because I was just like, ugh, I can't even do that movie. Granted, after Dave Filoni breaking it down, I will go watch it again just to really see all the stuff he pointed out. But I just remember even on Revenge of the Sith, I was just like, can we just say we watched it and move on? Because I can't get into the prequels because they're so heavy in the politics and all, which is so friggin' boring. Because in the Phantom Menace, all you're waiting for is more of
Darth Maul.
Darth
You
Maul.
just want to see Darth Maul. Yeah.
That's what
And
you
then
want to
they kill
see.
him.
And more Jedis doing
not
Jedi
kill him.
shit. You want Jedis doing Jedi shit? You want this? I don't want to watch a child being like who. I'm sorry, the kid wasn't a great actor, and like you know,
Jake Lloyd. Yeah.
yeah,
Jake,
I'm sure he's better now. But I mean, just back then, like the lines were just kind of cheesy, and then I just couldn't get into it, man. Again, I appreciate it more after listening to Dave Filoni break it down, but I can't do it, man. And then like. It's funny because my wife kept pointing out when you get to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith that, especially Attack of the Clones, Hayden Christensen or whatever looks like he's trying to rape her the whole time. If you look at his face, he's just saying things like a serial killer, like
a stalker.
It doesn't look like a true romance happening. It looks like an obsessive person, like giving rapey face to this chick the whole time, and you're just like. What the fuck is going on?
You know, it's funny because like when we watched the Phantom Menace today, and at the end when Jake Lloyd's standing there in his little Jedi outfit with a little crop top, and they gave him the little braid coming down or whatever it was, and he looks over at Padme or the Queen Amidala, and she's clearly like 10 years older than him or whatever.
Yeah.
And he gives her this smirk, and then she gives him this look, and I'm like, I was like, what a pedophile! Like this girl's after this little boy, and it was real like their relationship in the film was very older sister, younger brother,
right?
But it was kind of like this weird, like that end shot was like, dude, she's like. Smiling and he's giving her the smirk like I'm gonna get you later.
Yeah,
and he's like 9 years old. But I think it was
weird.
As much as I love Lucas, and you know I've told the story about when I got to meet Lucas on the set of a movie and all that stuff. I just you know a lot of times his directions are faster or slower, and that's about it. Like he hires the best actors for the job. Like you get Liam Neeson to play Qui-Gon, you expect him to just bring that performance, you know, and. From what I understand, he saw Natalie Portman in The Professional and waited till she was old enough to play Padme Amidala before he started going down the rabbit hole of making The Phantom Menace and making the new trilogy. He was like, I got to have this girl. She is my Princess Leia's mother. I got to have this girl, but she's too young. I got to wait a few years. And he waited for her to get older.
They should have had them close to the same age. The big gap was just too
the gap
weird.
was weird. Yeah.
And
And
then
then of course, like in Attack of the Clones, she's like, "Oh, you've grown. You're not the little
Yeah.
boy I remember on Tatooine." And he's like, he gives her rape face. He's
I
like,
know, rapey
"Ugh."
face, like, you know, like, you're just like,
Yeah.
dude, because if you go back and watch that movie and just watch how he stares at her, it's like you can't tell if he's planning on how he's going to kill her, eat her, or love her. You know, it's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, I don't get it. Like, that doesn't look like love. I don't look at my wife like that. If I did, she'd probably run out of the house thinking I was about to kill her. So it's just like, I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
I mean,
I think it's like I've said, I think George Lucas is a visionary. Like he knows how to push technology. He knows how to tell great stories. I just don't think he's a great director. And that's my big thing. I mean, cause to me, my favorite 2 Star Wars movies were the 2 he didn't direct, which was Empire and Jedi.
Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Yeah.
And that's not to take away from George Lucas. I mean, the guy has a vision and a great story. It's just, and again, Irvin Kershner was his teacher from film school.
Yeah, film school.
So of course he was, you know, amazing as a director in there, and it seemed like it was a very, like, going back and looking at behind the scenes of that, it was a very chill set in a way where he was spending a shit ton of time with the actors and focusing on performance.
Yeah, and I think that when you hear Irvin Kershner tell a story about locking George Lucas out of a soundstage because he was tired of hearing him, you know, over his shoulder, you know, like telling him, and they locked him out. I don't know if that's a true story, but he might have been bloviating a little bit.
But I think that's sort of the best relationship with Lucas is let him produce and oversee it and let someone else come in and really, deep dive with the actors and get the performances out of it. And like, again, like going back to Clone Wars, seeing the Ahsoka character and really, you know, that for me does a lot better job of understanding Anakin than any of the prequel movies for me.
Oh yeah. And
just that few episodes I've seen, I already get that sort of dynamic with them and how important I can see her character becoming. Because it was, I have to say, even not knowing anything, it was moving at the end when Vader walks up and picks up her lightsaber. And then you kind of think
because then
of
the
this whole
question is,
history.
where's that lightsaber?
Right. But I mean, for me, just thinking of it like this person was his, you know, pupil who they had, I imagine, just from the many seasons they had, a really tight, close relationship.
And it is. If you go back and you watch, it's real tight. Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that, you know, she's never mentioned in the movies, which it makes sense in the original trilogy because he's suppressed all of that. But I mean, I thought it was, and even you could almost feel Vader reflecting for a moment on it. Like you could almost see a hint of like he was remembering her in a positive way because the way he looked at it, and he didn't just toss it like she did, because she threw it at the end, was like, I'm done with this, you know?
Yeah.
He took it with him. So it's like he clearly cared about her still, even when he was fucking people up in the galaxy. So I mean, I felt that was very moving. And I was like,
man, there's
amazing.
a scene in one of the seasons of Rebels where Ahsoka fights Darth Vader. Doesn't know who he is, and he knows who she is. She don't know who he is, and then she splits open his mask, and you see half his face, and then she realizes, she looks his eye, and she goes, Anakin, and you gotta watch it.
How does that work then in the timeline? Is this season 7 happen in between some of the other seasons then?
The season 7 leads up to when Ahsoka Tano, you know, they bury the dead. That's right during Revenge of the Sith is going on. So when Anakin is on Mustafar fighting Obi-Wan, that shit's going down with her.
Yeah, because you could hear like the dialogue as one of them is meditating in the Force, and they can hear the fight going on.
Right. So then flash forward, the planet that she had crashed on turns to ice. At that point, when those are Imperial stormtroopers, not
I knew it was
clones.
A time jump.
Yeah, it was a time jump, but you could assume that is during the time when Darth Vader is ruling the galaxy at that point.
Well, that's the way I
prior
looked at it.
to A New Hope.
Right. It looked like right around New Hope because he had the red eyelets in the lenses.
That's the tell.
And the droids in the background and everything looked like from that era of Star Wars. The droid doing
Imperial
the
probe droid.
It looked like from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So it looked like one of those. So I was like, oh, so we've jumped ahead because the ship looked old and it was in the snow and all that. So I assume I got that it was a time jump, but I guess I'm just trying to figure out if she fought him. When did that happen? Did it happen in Clone Wars or did it happen?
It happened in Rebels.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, Star Wars Rebels. And that again, dude, you watch the first episode of Star Wars Rebels, you'll be hooked on the whole show.
Well, I'm now going through Clone Wars because I was impressed with the second episode. And
Star Wars Rebels is so cool because there were Jedi throughout the galaxy that heard the Order 60. And then what's really cool is in Rebels, you'll hear, remember Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith closes the thing, looks to Yoda and goes, I sent the message out to the remaining Jedi. And Yoda's like, I hope they hear it or whatever. They show the hologram of what he said to them. And he says, it goes on this whole diatribe about, and so like, they're all aware of what's going on if there's any of them left. And there are some left. But Ahsoka Tano's voice was in The Rise of Skywalker. She was one of the voices that said, Rise, Rey.
So she's dead.
So, well, she's dead, apparently, but we don't know what her story was. And if she's going to be in The Mandalorian, that means she survived everything. But again,
she has 30 years to.
But also remember, she put the lightsabers down and walked away.
Right. So
she won't have a lightsaber. That kind of sucks.
So I mean, kind of going back to what all that kind of means is like I actually enjoy the Clone Wars story more than I do the prequel films. Because the prequels just focus so heavily on the politics part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
And that's the part where I was just like, and I remember watching that in the theater and just being like, oh, this is so boring. Like, this shit is boring. Like, even now watching it again, I'm just like wanting to fast forward to just the Jedi, the fun parts. And I think that's what was, because the thing with the original trilogy, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know how to say this. Not that it felt more personal, but it was more human stories. Like you have this group. It wasn't
focused on the visual effects,
right? Which clearly was the main focus of
the visual effects were a tool to tell the story, but not the story. And in the prequels, the visual effects were the story, and the story was and the acting was, everything was a little flat. Yeah. And I get that, but it was convoluted with the politics, man. It got to be so much. Cause like as soon as Palpatine came on, Amy looks at me and goes, I thought he was bad. And I'm like, well, it gets there. That's the whole, she'll figure that out in the Attack of the Clones and the Revenge of the Sith. She knows he's the Emperor because she watched the prequel, she watched the sequel trilogy, and she's watched the original trilogy. So she knows he's the bad guy, but she, it's like, but everything with the Senate, and you have to vote and an up down and
I think
a vote of no confidence. And it's just like,
I think the politics kind of could have worked if it wasn't also trying to be a kid's movie at the same time. I think that's where you've just got
it's like it was trying to give the adults something to latch onto. But again, that was another movie like the Phantom Menace. As I was watching it today, and I don't watch those movies all the time, obviously. But there were things that I saw that were, clearly, fan service, like the Tusken Raiders were up on the ridge shooting, and they're like, and you're like, okay, that's a throwback to 77. So Lucas did a lot of those things peppering in too.
Oh yeah. The fact that Anakin created C-3PO,
everything was too convenient. Right? It was all too convenient, and then it's the way the kid Jake Lloyd delivered some of those lines, like, sorry, I can't fix you, 3PO. And I haven't put your covers on you, but mom will take care of mom. I'll see you. It was like, what? Like, really?
And the line is like, my name's Anakin and I'm a person, or however he said.
Right. It's just, But I
Yeah.
think, the kid, it is what it is, man. We can't go back and
Well,
fix
that's
it.
the director's fault, not the kid's fault.
Yeah, because
the
he
end of
was
the day.
good in Jingle All the Way.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that was him.
Yeah. I mean, he
He's a-
hasn't done a lot of work.
Yeah.
And even since then, because, I mean, he was diagnosed, bipolar and, was arrested for running from the cops in a high-speed chase and all that. His mugshot is all over the internet. And people need to give that kid a break, because he's had a tough time. But now he's doing cons again and he's got his life back and, he's making his money doing cons. So I hope
for
he
him.
gets I don't know why, people like Lucas and they don't reach out to people like that have a tough time and say, well, it's kind of my fault. I kind of screwed you there, kid.
Yeah.
let me do something where they give you a job at Lucasfilm. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Jar Jar.
it's kind of like what Will Wheaton's doing now with Star Trek. He's the host of that show. That's like, hey, they're bringing him back in the fold because I still think we're going to get him as Captain of the Enterprise.
That would be awesome.
But we'll see. Okay, so one other thing is that Blumhouse, Jason Blum, they're doing Spawn.
Yeah.
They just came off, Invisible Man, which hit pay dirt. They made a ton of money off Invisible Man. And they're actively doing Spawn. They're talking about Jamie Foxx. Now, Jamie Foxx, he was in that Spider-Man movie as the lightning guy. I didn't think
they
he did too
screwed that up. Electro, yeah, that was horrible.
I didn't like
Trash.
him as I didn't like the Electro. It just looked weird.
He just
how you
looked
could
like a
see-
monster. It was so weird. Like,
Yeah. But I mean, you've always been a McFarlane fan, right?
I'm a diehard McFarlane. Like his run on Amazing Spider-Man, like Todd McFarlane, is one of the things that pulled me into the comic book. Him and Jim Lee were my two favorite comic book artists. Amazing Spider, like his run on Amazing Spider-Man is iconic. Like the covers that he did and all that stuff is amazing.
Well, so when it comes to Spawn, I mean, I know they've done a couple animated things. They did the movie with John Leguizamo in '97.
Yeah, with Michael J. White.
Michael J. White, yeah, and he's actually in really good shape. Like, if they really wanted to, you want to get the fans buzzing, you could bring him back. But
I liked him.
But you're gonna go with Jamie Foxx. Like,
well, I mean,
Jamie Foxx doesn't know martial arts. Like he's a real.
Well, it's all CG.
Okay, once he's got the cape and all that, they're gonna mocap. Okay, gotcha.
So that'll be some martial artists, kind of like what they're doing with Mandalorian. Like, there's 3 different people that are the Mandalorian. The guy who can fight amazing.
The gallery. We forgot to talk about the gallery.
Yeah, the gallery where they broke down like how they did it, and it was 3 different people. So I think you could easily pull off Spawn like that. And I loved the original Spawn movie, especially for that time. It was a fun. Didn't take itself too seriously, obviously, with John Leguizamo's character in it, who was farting and flying away and doing crazy
shit. Yeah, but
shit.
that CG makeup was, or not CG, the prosthetic makeup on him was badass. You got to admit.
Oh, it was, for that era, they were doing some really amazing stuff. I like it. And I mean, Todd McFarlane has definitely got a look and a style. So, and if he's really on board, I'm excited to see where that goes. Because, I mean, he created Spawn. Like, that's not like a character he inherited. He created it. Like, and I don't know if you know this, back in like, I guess it was the mid 90s or whatever, like all the major Marvel artists kind of got together because they didn't like how they were being treated by Marvel. So you had Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, I want to say Rob Liefeld was one of them, but there was a handful of Marvel artists that left Marvel and created Image Comics and then launched a bunch of new comic books on Image. And Spawn was like the premier issue to pull people in because it was Todd McFarlane. And that was like and it's still, I think Spawn is still going and people love that comic book, which is impressive for a startup, essentially, comic book company to have a character that's, going strong like that still. So
but now, Blumhouse is known for doing these movies on, because I did a Blumhouse movie, I think we had a $4 million budget on
cheesy horror
Jezebel.
films.
And and I worked on Halloween 2018. That was
Yeah.
Blumhouse too. And I think they, they only spent, I don't know, 26 million or something like that on Halloween. I could be wrong. I know the sequel Halloween Kills is like 40 million, but it made pay dirt. So the first one, so they're dumping more money into it. But they're probably going to do it on a shoestring, which could be a good thing, right? If they've proved that they can do the CGI on Invisible Man on a low budget type thing, then they can probably do Spawn.
Well, and I still think you could do Spawn with a lot of practical stuff. I mean, you could still, because essentially, Justice League to an extent, you can have Superman walking around in the suit with a CG cape and stuff. Because Spawn's cape is definitely going to be CGI.
CGI,
His cape is crazy big and has a mind of its own almost. So it's like definitely. But the thing that is, if Todd McFarlane's involved, I have faith because he'll make sure it stays true to his comic book. And I think
he's involved.
Yeah, so that's a good sign for me. Like I think I'm actually anxious to see that movie, knowing that he's involved.
Do you have any of the Todd McFarlane movie maniacs? Any of the action figures that came out? Those I have the Jaws playset, which is the shark coming up and eating Quint and the orca sinking in the water. I have that. It's on my shelf. It's one of my marquee pieces. But I'm not like a collector. I took that shit out of the box. I set it up.
Yeah.
I don't care about having stuff in the box.
Me either.
It's just not my thing. But I loved all the movie maniacs that Todd McFarlane, put his seal of approval on all those, action figures and stuff that came out. It's pretty badass stuff. We touched a little bit on the gallery, the Mandalorian, all the technology that's coming. That was a pretty wild episode to see all the behind the scenes. They finally really pulled the curtain up and there was shots where you saw the whole digital wall being manipulated and moved and then how the set dressers would move in boulders to fix a seam or something and just really wild stuff. And then this article on medium.com came out and talked all about this renaissance in filmmaking. Now that COVID-19 is out, they're going to be cutting crews down. They're going to be doing stuff on stages. You don't have to worry about traveling people to another country like Morocco because you can recreate it on a stage now with the digital cinema. Lucas and those guys at Lucasfilm, they really opened up a can of worms, but at the same time, they're revolutionizing things. We talked a lot about this in the last episode, but since the gallery came out, that came out and we had already recorded the other podcast. So,
Right. Well, we don't need to go over a ton of that again, but I will say it was one thing that really stood out to me this time around was, and how before I was like, it's game changer. It's going to change everything. I still agree with that. But they did say it does have a caveat with it that it only works when you're sort of silhouetted, like your light source on them can't be stronger than the background. So that means a lot of outdoor stuff. And then when you kind of think about it, a lot of the stuff they did in The Mandalorian with that thing is either an inside set or it's at dusk or dawn. Like if you think about it, it was not a lot. And then even with when they were, I think it was the third episode when he'd gotten the child and they'd stolen his parts, the Jawas had stolen.
Right, with the Jawas,
Yeah, even a lot of that was in like caverns. If you notice like the way they did it, they showed it, like he was in a cavern in like, it had a cutout top because they said because I think it was Jon Favreau was talking about, we found, if you try to hit him, if your light source is too bright on them, it won't match up. It'll break that illusion with the background because the background. And that was because
they learned that on the Jungle Book.
Right. So I do feel like, you can't just go in as like, this will change everything. We can go in and shoot like it's, we're in Morocco. Yeah, maybe at night in Morocco. During the daytime, it's clearly going to be a lot more. You're going to have to get real creative with how you do it, which I'm sure they'll figure it out. But that was really interesting to learn that aspect of it. And then when you go back and look, there's a ton of silhouette type of shots in The Mandalorian. and lots of just dusk, which I appreciate that they were saying in the thing, you can do like an 18-hour dawn or whatever, like, or 10-hour dawn. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because that's on real movie sets when we're working and we're having to adjust lights every hour because the sun's moving in order to capsulate an outdoor shot. You're going from small lights to 18Ks just to keep up with the sun. And, you don't have to do that. You literally can set the lights as a dawn. And that's the thing, like capturing what they call magic hour.
Magic hour, yeah.
Magic hour. You only get an hour. That's why they call it magic hour, is that time it's a transition between dusk and dawn, and the light is perfect to film in, and you only get that magic hour to do it, period.
Well, really,
now you can have a 12-hour magic hour.
You don't even get the full hour. You only get really one shot in that hour because it's constantly changing. It's like it's like that's the thing that's awesome about magic hour, and the thing that's horrible about it is you've really got one shot at it. And you're not going to be able to edit something that's going to work without seriously relighting stuff, and you don't have that time. So, and that's where I think stuff like this is going to be amazing, because you can have a full day at the same time the whole time, so that's really cool. But it was interesting to hear sort of the slight drawbacks with that technology, and I'm sure they'll figure it out, like, because as soon as the industry starts embracing it.
I also loved Jon Favreau saying, if it wasn't for Kathleen Kennedy, allowing it all to, he said it at the table.
That's that. I'm going to throw it. But if you watch his body language too, this is what I was telling you. He is aimed at Dave Filoni the entire time. So if you want to really get into, CSI this shit, look at his body language. And even it's like when she says something, it's just like, I'm here, throwing a softball in, like, look at me, I'm here. Like, no one gives a shit about what you're saying, because the people that matter, that are really making the decisions of Star Wars in the right direction, are the ones that are talking.
You know why they all care about Kathleen Kennedy?
Because she signs her check.
Ta-da!
And that's only power she has.
That's not true.
The
Force is female, my friend.
Why would they even do that? Like, why even go
kidding.
there? Like,
I'm kidding.
The Force is for everyone.
I'm poking a bear.
Yeah.
But all right, so we had a good time on this episode. I'll see you on the next one, bro.
Later.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Spotlight with Shaun O'Rourke. Make sure you follow me on social media. All the links are in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you on the next one.